The harsh truth about success everyone avoids: people think success is glamorous. That it's built on motivation, talent, inspiration, passion. But here's the harsh truth no one wants to admit: success is ugly. Success is lonely. Success is unfair. Success demands more from you than you ever believed you could give. And most people never reach it, not because they're incapable, but because they can't handle the truth of what success actually costs. No one understood this truth more painfully than a man named Adrian Locke. The man who did everything right and still failed. Adrian wasn't lazy. He wasn't unambitious. He wasn't undisciplined. He did everything by the book. He woke up early, worked late, set goals, read dozens of self-help books, listened to motivational speakers, made vision boards, stayed consistent. He did all the things success gurus told him to do. And yet, he remained stuck. Invisible. Unnoticed. Exhausted. Frustrated. While others around him seemed to surpass him effortlessly. Adrian felt like life was playing a cruel joke. He whispered to himself one night, "I'm trying so hard. Why isn't anything working?" He wasn't asking the universe. He was begging it. The moment he almost gave up, it was 2:11 a.m. Adrian sat in his dim apartment, surrounded by the silent glare of his laptop screen. The document in front of him was empty. For weeks, he'd been trying to finish a proposal that could change his career. A proposal that could finally open the door to everything he wanted. But every time he tried, his mind froze. He felt heavy. Burnt out. Defeated. Failure wasn't a fear anymore. It was a routine. He leaned back and whispered, "Maybe I'm just not meant to succeed." And then a voice answered from the edge of the room. "You're wrong, Adrian." Adrian jolted upright, heart slamming against his ribs. A man stood in the shadows, calm, steady, watching him. Adrian gasped. Who are you?" The man stepped forward into the light. "I'm here because you're about to make a mistake," he said. Adrian swallowed hard. "What mistake?" The stranger pointed to the empty document. "You're about to quit, right before you learn the truth that would change everything." Adrian shook his head. "I've already heard every motivational speech," he muttered. "I've tried everything." The man smiled faintly. "No," he said. "You've tried the pleasant truths about success." He took another step forward, eyes piercing. "But you've never faced the harsh ones. The lie everyone tells about success." The stranger walked to the desk and tapped the laptop. "You think success comes from discipline, mindset, routines, motivation," he said, almost with disappointment. "But that's only 10 of it." Adrian frowned. "Then what's the other 90? The man leaned closer. "Pain." Adrian blinked. "Pain?" "Yes," the man said. "Uncomfortable, brutal, soul-stripping pain. The kind people avoid. The kind people run from. The kind that forces you to grow faster than you want to." He stepped back. "No one tells you that success begins where comfort ends." Adrian swallowed. "And ends where comfort begins." He paused. "People don't fail because they're incapable, they fail because they want success without sacrifice." Adrian felt something in his chest tighten. He whispered, "So, what am I doing wrong?" The stranger smiled. "You're trying to succeed while staying the same person." The real reason he was stuck. The stranger circled the room, examining Adrian's books, notes, whiteboards. "You've done the work," he said. "You've put in the hours." Then he pointed to Adrian's chest. "But you haven't changed this. Your identity. Your mindset. Your tolerance for discomfort." He stepped closer. "You want success, but you also want safety. Adrian froze. You want growth, but you also want comfort. Another step. You want transformation, but you refuse to let go of the version of you that's holding you back. Adrian's breath shook. That, the stranger said, is why you're stuck. The hardest truth. The stranger sat across from Adrian, eyes unwavering. Adrian, he said softly, you are not failing because you're doing too little. He paused. You are failing because you are trying to succeed while avoiding the very experiences that create success. Adrian stared at him, stunned. What experiences? The stranger answered without hesitation, rejection. Embarrassment. Loneliness. Fatigue. Uncertainty. Risk. Doubt. Pressure. Loss. He held Adrian's gaze. Most people avoid these feelings, and then wonder why they never grow. Adrian felt exposed, as if the man was reading his soul. So what do I do? Adrian whispered. The stranger stood slowly. Tomorrow, he said, I'll show you the truth about success. He placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder. And why you've been running from it your entire life. He walked toward the door. But tonight, rest. You're going to need strength for what you're about to learn. And as the door clicked shut, Adrian felt something he hadn't felt in years, fear mixed with hope. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew the stranger was right. And the truth he'd avoided his entire life was finally coming for him. Adrian didn't rest. Not because he didn't try, but because the stranger's words echoed through his mind like a haunting truth. You're trying to succeed while avoiding the experiences that create success. He lay awake replaying his life. All the times he quit early. All the projects he never finished. All the risks he avoided. All the times he chose comfort instead of growth. He realized something painful. He'd always wanted success, but he had never wanted to hurt for it. By the time the sun rose, he felt both exhausted and strangely awake. And at 9 a.m. sharp, a knock. Adrian opened the door. The stranger stood there, calm as ever. Ready? He asked. Adrian swallowed. For what? The man stepped inside. For the truth. The truth about the people who make it. The stranger motioned for Adrian to sit. People who succeed, he began, aren't smarter or more talented. He held up a single finger. They're more willing. Adrian frowned. Willing to what? The man's voice sharpened, not harsh, but unflinchingly honest. To be uncomfortable. To be rejected. To be embarrassed. To fail publicly. To take risks they're not ready for. To sit in uncertainty longer than anyone else. He paused. You want success without suffering. But the people who make it are the ones willing to suffer without quitting. Adrian looked down. That sounds painful. The stranger nodded. It is. Then why do they do it? Adrian asked. A faint smile crossed the man's face. Because they understand something most people never will. He leaned closer. Pain is the price of admission for the life you want. The reason motivation doesn't last. The stranger walked to Adrian's cluttered whiteboard covered in plans, deadlines, and goals. You've been relying on motivation, he said. Motivation is a spark. But sparks die. He tapped the whiteboard. You start strong. You get excited. You feel unstoppable. He wiped a section clean with his sleeve. But when things get hard, motivation evaporates. He turned around. That's when most people quit. Adrian whispered, why? The man smiled sadly. Because they think difficulty means they're going the wrong way, when difficulty is actually the sign they're growing. He paused. Success doesn't require motivation. It requires momentum. Adrian nodded slowly. So I need to keep going even when it feels wrong? Especially when it feels wrong, the man said. That's usually when it's finally working. The weight of the old self. The stranger pulled a chair and sat directly across from Adrian. You think, he said softly, that success is something you get. He shook his head. Success is something you become. Adrian frowned. What do you mean? The stranger pointed to Adrian's chest. You're still trying to succeed as the same person you were 5 years ago. Same habits. Same comfort zone. Same beliefs. Same fears. He leaned forward. But success requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. Adrian's breath caught. You can't become that version, the stranger continued, without letting go of who you are now. Adrian's voice was barely above a whisper. That sounds terrifying. The stranger nodded. It is. The harsh truth. People avoid. The stranger stood and walked toward the kitchen counter. Adrian, he said, the reason you haven't succeeded is simple. He turned around slowly. You've been trying to protect your comfort, more than your potential. Adrian felt the words hit him in the center of his chest. The man continued, you avoid pain. You avoid risk. You avoid rejection. You avoid judgment. He took a slow step forward. But success lives in the places you avoid. Adrian whispered, so I've been walking away from success, my whole life? The stranger nodded once. Yes. Not because you're weak, but because no one warned you what success demands. The difference between pain and suffering. The stranger returned to the desk and picked up Adrian's notebook. Most people confuse two things, he said. He wrote, pain is not equal to suffering. Adrian leaned closer. Pain is necessary, the stranger said. It's the pressure that shapes you. He tapped the second word. Suffering is choosing to stay the same. Adrian blinked. So pain becomes suffering when I resist growth? The stranger smiled. Exactly. He closed the notebook. You've been suffering. Not because life is cruel, but because you've been fighting the process meant to transform you. Adrian exhaled shakily. So, I need to embrace pain? Yes, the man said softly. But not all pain. He raised one finger. Only the pain that leads to growth. The past failure. He never let go of. The stranger sat back down. There's another reason you're stuck, he said quietly. One you've never admitted. Adrian stiffened. What reason? The man eyed him gently. You're still carrying a failure from your past. One you never recovered from. Adrian looked away. I don't want to talk about that. You must, the stranger replied. Because that failure is controlling you. Adrian clenched his jaw. It was years ago, but the wound is fresh, the stranger said. Tell me. Adrian hesitated, then finally whispered, I started a company at 23. I believed in it so much. But it failed. Hard. He swallowed. I lost money. I lost confidence. I lost everything. The stranger nodded. And what did you tell yourself after that? Adrian closed his eyes, voice cracking. That I wasn't cut out for success. The stranger tapped Adrian's chest lightly. And that belief, he said, has been sabotaging every attempt since. The revelation he never expected. Adrian wiped a tear from his cheek. So what do I do now? He whispered. The stranger stood slowly. You confront the source, he said. The source of what? Adrian asked. The stranger's voice softened. The source of your fear. Your self-doubt. Your pain. He walked toward the front door. Tomorrow, he said, I'll show you why that failure broke you so deeply. He opened the door halfway. And what you never knew about it. Adrian's brow furrowed. What do you mean? What didn't I know? The stranger paused, then turned back with an expression that sent a chill through Adrian's spine. You didn't fail because you weren't ready, Adrian. He stepped into the hall. You failed because someone else stood in your way. The door closed. Adrian's heart pounded. Someone else? Who? And why did the stranger sound like he already knew the answer? Adrian barely moved for several minutes. The stranger's final sentence replayed in his mind like a broken echo. You didn't fail because you weren't ready, Adrian. You failed because someone else stood in your way. Someone else. Someone he trusted. Someone who had been there during his first attempt at success. Someone who watched him collapse and let him believe it was his fault. Adrian stared at the wall, heart pounding, as memories began to surface, memories he had never fully confronted. At exactly 9 a.m., a knock at the door shattered the silence. He opened it slowly. The stranger stepped inside with a calmness that felt almost unreal. Sit, he said. Adrian obeyed. The man studied him for a moment. You already know who blocked you, don't you? He asked. Adrian swallowed hard. I have an idea. Good, the stranger replied. Then let's bring it into the light. The failure that never made sense. The stranger leaned against the counter. Tell me, he said, how did your company fail? Adrian looked down. We were launching a product, he said. I worked on it for a year. Days, nights, weekends, everything. And, the stranger prompted. Adrian clenched his jaw. My partner, he promised he'd handle the marketing. The launch. The distribution. The stranger nodded. And did he? Adrian's eyes burned. No. He didn't. What did he do? Adrian's voice cracked. He disappeared. Silence. I tried to save it, Adrian whispered. But by the time I realized he wasn't doing anything, it was too late. We had no system. No promotion. No contacts. He wiped a tear with the back of his hand. I thought it was my fault. I thought I wasn't good enough as a founder. The stranger stepped closer. Adrian, he said softly, you didn't fail. You were betrayed. The pain he never let himself feel. Adrian shook his head. No, he didn't betray me. He just wasn't ready. Or I wasn't clear enough. Or, the stranger raised a hand. Stop. Adrian froze. You spent years defending the person who hurt you, the stranger said. As if protecting him would ease the pain. Adrian's breathing trembled. The stranger continued, you should have been angry. You should have confronted him. You should have held him accountable. He paused. But instead, you turned all the blame inward. Adrian closed his eyes. Yes, he whispered. I told myself I wasn't capable. I told myself I wasn't leadership material. I told myself I wasn't built for success. And you believed it, the stranger said. Adrian felt tears slip down his face. The root of his broken mindset. The stranger walked slowly around the room. You know why betrayal hurts more than failure? He asked. Adrian shook his head. Because failure teaches you something, the man said. But betrayal confuses you. He continued, when someone else sabotages your effort, you don't know what part of the collapse was your fault, and what part was theirs. He paused. And the mind always chooses the most painful answer, it must have been me. Adrian's heart cracked. That belief, the stranger said, became your identity. Your entire mindset. Your entire relationship with success. Adrian looked up, eyes red. So everything I've done since then, every time I quit, every time I doubted myself, the stranger nodded. Yes. It all traces back to a wound that was inflicted by someone who didn't value your effort. Adrian put his face in his hands. I never healed from it, he whispered. The stranger spoke gently. No. Because you never understood what really happened. The truth he never knew. The stranger reached into his coat pocket again. This time, he pulled out a folded piece of paper, old, worn, edges frayed. Adrian hesitated before taking it. He opened it slowly. His eyes widened. It was an email. Dated the week before their company collapsed. It was from his partner. And it wasn't addressed to Adrian. It was addressed to someone else, a competitor. Adrian read the words aloud in a trembling whisper. I think Adrian doesn't realize I'm stepping back from the project. If it folds, I'll blame my inexperience. He'll take the responsibility. He always does. Adrian's stomach twisted. He felt like the ground was falling away beneath him. The stranger watched him quietly. He planned to let you fail, he said. Because he knew you would take the blame. Adrian's breath shook violently. All the nights he stayed awake working. All the sacrifices. All the trust he put into someone who never had his back. The pain hit him all at once, years of suppressed anger, disappointment, and heartbreak. Why, Adrian whispered, why are you showing me this? The final revelation. The stranger stepped closer, voice calm but firm. Because you built your entire belief system on a lie. Adrian looked up, shattered. You told yourself you failed because you weren't good enough. You told yourself you weren't destined for success. You told yourself you didn't have what it takes. The stranger shook his head. But the truth is simple. A pause. You were never the problem, Adrian. The man placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder. You were betrayed, and you carried the consequences alone. Adrian felt something inside him break, but this time, it wasn't collapse. It was release. He cried, not from weakness, but from finally understanding the weight he'd carried for so long. The stranger let him cry. When the tears finally slowed, the man spoke again, more gently this time. Now that you finally see the truth, we can rebuild. Adrian sniffed, wiping his face. How? He whispered. The stranger stepped back. Tomorrow, he said, I'll show you why your grandfather asked me to return. Adrian stiffened. And what he knew about your success long before you did. He walked to the door. Prepare yourself, he said softly. Tomorrow is the day everything changes. The door closed. And Adrian sat in the quiet room, holding the email, realizing that for the first time in his life, his failure wasn't his fault. But his comeback would be. Adrian sat on the floor for a long time after the stranger left. The email trembled in his hands. A truth he never expected. A betrayal he had buried deep inside himself. And a burden he had carried for years, thinking it belonged to him. But now everything was different. He wasn't broken. He wasn't weak. He wasn't incapable. He had simply believed a lie. A lie planted by someone he trusted. As the minutes passed, something inside him shifted. Not anger. Not revenge. But a quiet, steady clarity. He whispered to himself, I was never the failure. And for the first time in years, he believed it. At exactly 9 a.m., the knock came again. Adrian stood immediately. His heart wasn't heavy this time. It was steady. He opened the door. The stranger stepped inside, studying Adrian's face. You slept, the man observed. But differently. Adrian nodded. Yes. The stranger smiled faintly. Good. Let's finish what we started. The only person who could break him. They sat at the small kitchen table. The stranger interlocked his fingers. Adrian, he began, you now understand the external sabotage. But you haven't uncovered the internal one. Adrian frowned. Internal? The man nodded. There's someone else who stood in your way. Someone whose voice was louder than your betrayers. Someone who shaped your belief long before the business failed. Adrian leaned forward. Who? The stranger's eyes softened. You. Adrian froze. You blamed yourself. You shrank. You stopped trusting your own instincts. You stopped taking risks. You started believing the worst version of yourself. A pause. No betrayer in the world can destroy you if you don't finish the job for them. Adrian swallowed painfully. So, how do I undo it? How do I stop being my own enemy? The stranger stood. I'll show you. The place he had been avoiding for years. Get your coat, the man said. Adrian obeyed, and they stepped outside. They walked down a familiar street. Too familiar. As they approached a quiet, modest house with a cracked driveway, Adrian's breath caught. This is, he whispered. Yes, the stranger replied. Adrian stared at the house. His childhood home. The air around him thickened with memories, some warm, some painful, all buried. Why are we here? He asked. The stranger stepped closer. Because this is where your relationship with success was shaped. Adrian felt a cold wave wash through him. My father, he whispered. The man nodded. Your father didn't break you intentionally, the stranger said. But he taught you something dangerous. Adrian's hands shook. He taught you that mistakes meant punishment. That failure meant shame. That risk meant disappointment. Adrian closed his eyes as flashes returned, his father yelling when he got a bad grade. His father's silence when he tried something new and failed. His father's disappointment when he didn't meet expectations. He whispered, I was never allowed to fail. The stranger nodded. And that, he said gently, is why you quit so quickly as an adult. The wound his grandfather saw before anyone else. They walked behind the house, where an old wooden shed stood. Weathered. Small. Silent. The stranger pushed open the door. Inside, dust floated in the sunlight. Adrian's throat tightened. His grandfather's workbench. His tools. His wooden carvings. It was like stepping into a frozen memory. The stranger spoke quietly. Your grandfather knew your father's expectations were crushing you. He knew you were terrified of disappointing him. Adrian blinked back tears. How did he know? Because he saw how you changed around him, the stranger said. When you worked with your father, you were tense. Afraid. Controlled. He pointed to the workbench. But here, you came alive. Adrian remembered. The laughter. The mistakes. The joy of creating something just because he wanted to. He let me fail, Adrian whispered. Yes, the stranger said softly. He let you mess up. He let you try again. He let you grow. He stepped closer. He was the only one who showed you the truth. Failure isn't shameful. It's the path to mastery. The promise his grandfather made before he died. The stranger reached into his coat again. This time, he pulled out a small, folded piece of paper yellowed with age. Adrian's breath hitched. I know this, he whispered. That's my grandfather's handwriting. The stranger handed it to him. Adrian unfolded it slowly. His eyes immediately filled with tears. It wasn't a letter. It was a line. Just one line. Written in his grandfather's careful script, if he ever forgets that failure is part of the climb, help him remember. Adrian pressed the paper to his chest. The stranger spoke quietly. That was the promise he asked of me. Adrian looked up, stunned. You knew him? The man nodded. Yes. And he knew you better than anyone else. Tears streamed down Adrian's face. He believed in me, he whispered. More than you ever allowed yourself to, the stranger replied. The final lesson. The stranger placed a gentle hand on Adrian's shoulder. Success isn't about being fearless, he said. It's about being willing. He squeezed lightly. Willing to fail. Willing to hurt. Willing to try again. Willing to outlast your old self. Adrian closed his eyes. And your grandfather knew, the stranger continued, that you'd spend your adult life trying to avoid the very pain that would make you great. Adrian let out a shaky breath. So what do I do now? He asked. The stranger smiled, not wide, but with a quiet pride. You stop running, he said. And you start climbing. The mentor who leaves once the truth is known. Adrian stepped out of the shed into the sunlight. Everything felt different. Lighter. Clearer. Stronger. The stranger stood beside him, hands in his coat pockets. Where will you go now? Adrian asked. The man stepped back, his figure framed gently by the morning light. You won't need me anymore, he said quietly. Adrian's heart tightened. Will I ever see you again? The stranger nodded. When you forget, he said. When you doubt. When you stand at another threshold. He took one step back. But not today. Adrian wiped his eyes. Thank you. The stranger gave one final nod. Your grandfather would be proud. And with that, he walked away down the path, fading slowly into the world around him. Leaving Adrian standing in the sunlight, holding the note close to his heart. Not afraid. Not broken. Not unsure. But ready. Ready to face the harsh truth. Success isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to transform you. And Adrian was finally becoming the man he was always meant to be.